Tonight we have Jonathan Coyne, Coordinator of Recreation Services at City of Stonington, Rob Ward, Club and Programs Manager at Triathlon Victoria, and Vanessa Phillips, Senior Project Officer of Physical Activity at VicHealth. Remember, if you have any questions for our panel, put them in the Q&A function. We'll get to as many as we can. And we also have Erica working away at them in the background, so keep an eye on it for the written responses as well. Our first question for the panel is framed by the poll results. We should be able to see the top answers come up any moment now. The question, just to reiterate, was, what are the parts of the club sport experience that will change because of COVID that you are most worried about? Using the top responses in the poll there, we can see the top one was getting everyone to do the right thing. How new regulations will impact was at 48% of the votes. Having volunteers available at 45%, and also just underneath that, not having everyone return. So Rob, if I could go to you first, what are some options for clubs that you know of in terms of combating these concerns?
Yeah, thanks, Grant, and good evening to everyone. I suppose for triathlon, we're in the off-season at the moment, so, and given that being a state body, we don't deal directly with members through clubs, we deal with clubs and members a little bit separately. Where we've gone about it so far is we've done a survey of our members around their appetite to return to racing. So for people's benefit in triathlon in Metropolitan, it's generally run by commercial race directors. Clubs have training but don't have a club rooms or a training facility generally. They meet at a park or a bike track or whatever it might be. And in regional areas, I know there's a few regional clubs on the line, clubs run races for their members at local facilities. So our survey was around what's the appetite to come back to competition or events. Grant, probably the results in the poll there are very similar to what we found, in that people are most concerned about distancing. So how will triathlon event villages and transition areas and courses be designed to promote social distancing as much as possible? What will the sanitisation and cleaning look like? And then also, they're probably the biggest three. Sort of that layout of courses, layout of village, and then the sanitisation and cleaning. Our strategies will be around supporting race directors to have more, I suppose, cleansing spaces and timing of events. So I suppose from a social distancing perspective, format of racing will change. It won't be mass starts. It'll be possibly one after the other to promote some distancing there. Changing bike layouts, changing transition planning to have more space with bikes. I suppose further to that, I think there was one there about having everyone doing the right thing. So we're going to have some restrictions on the number of people that can come and participate, no spectators, etc. But for us, it's about, I think the next stage is in communicating and educating people what it looks like. So I think the video alluded to letting people imagine what it looks like or painting a picture for them. That'll be our next step.
Jonathan, do you have any additional thoughts on ways to combat those concerns?
Yeah, it's a conversation that's come up with our clubs quite a bit. I think early on with the return to training, the guidelines were moving pretty quickly, and different interpretations were happening quite a bit. And our role at local government, we really saw it as, we're not there to enforce the guidelines or the rules. We're there to work with the clubs, and we wanted our community back training where they could. Clubs are really nervous about that enforcement sort of piece, and local law is going to be coming down, and council officers and the police. And really, if clubs are following the guidelines, they're set out pretty clearly, trying not to interpret them your way as well, and just checking it off. We asked all our clubs to send through their individual plan and their checklist, and basically just sign off on a simple form to say they've read the guidelines, they've communicated it to their members, and acknowledging that most communities they're all volunteers. So there's only so much control you've got over your road coaches, the parents and the kids. You can only do what's within your control. So that communication is really the key for us, and it's the ongoing communication which is happening through. I get the stress, the thing around volunteers as well. A couple of our sports are looking at not going back, even though we're encouraging them to, because they've got an older volunteer base. And it makes sense with the virus, obviously, potentially having a greater impact on older people. I get why people are tentative around it, and it's this whole of club approach now. It can't just fall on the one or two people at the club who do everything. If sport's going to get back, everyone needs to get involved and really assist the whole club to be able to get back to training and eventually playing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. It's a holistic approach, and I think everyone's starting to realise in all aspects, especially in sport and recreation, that we are in this together and we all need to work together. Jonathan, sticking with you, what are some of the ways that you've seen clubs improve their social experience during COVID? How have they been able to keep people together, and what do you think, are there any ways that people have been using that can be beneficial for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think seen a lot with clubs who have sort of almost tidied up their communication channels, which has been pleasing to see. Some clubs have, a bit like how the state sporting bodies do, a COVID page on their website. That's where all the information is there. And what that's enabled them to do is, you've got your official communication, one-stop shop, anyone can find it. It keeps the social media channels there for what it should be for, and that is connecting with the members, creating that sense of belonging, which is so important at a sporting club. I think coaches and clubs who have been able to almost replicate those social connections that we get at the clubs through online platforms has been so important. You hear of team dinners on a Thursday night still happening, coaches who are putting together technique sessions for their players at seniors and juniors, mindfulness sessions which players can do in their own time. One of the local golf clubs where I live down on the peninsula, the local pro was offering free 20-minute swing assessments online for all members. Great way to keep the members connected. They've already paid their fees. There's no refunds. But, the 20-minute swing assessment can happen in the backyard. And I've seen that start to happen in, football as well, that technique around kicking the football if players want that greater connection. And people are getting creative too. Revenue and funds are a big issue for clubs, and sponsors are losing money. And if you've already received the sponsorship money, I've seen some great virtual social media backdrops by local clubs for messages on their social media, putting up the local sponsor, and things around meals and all that sort of stuff from restaurants who are helping the local sporting clubs. That real community connection and almost helping each other, which is exactly the call out which the government had to get through this together, has been great to see. And I think if clubs can continue to get creative in how they help their sponsors connect with their members, it will help with revenues. It's going to be a major concern. And again, that communication, something like Team App, I know it's stress for a lot of people is now going to be recording the attendances at training. A few of our clubs have already said to us they're using Team App, that check-in. This might sound like a plug for them, it's definitely not, but it's just that making it simple. We don't need pens and paper out at training to record who's attending and what they've done. Let's try to keep it as simple for our volunteers as possible.
Rob, have you experienced any creative ways that clubs have been able to bypass this different world that we're currently living in?
We have, Grant. Our club's pivoted very, very quickly. It's sort of, I suppose, the start of isolation and restrictions came right at the very end of our season. So members were engaged ongoing. So we've been able to leverage online platforms such as Zwift and Strava and those sorts of apps that people on the call may have and so forth, to have, whether it's a group ride, so you can set up a Zwift ride where every member of the club logs in and meets at a set time and they ride a particular course and they're able to interact and communicate. They'll have quasi competitions or sort of sharing of your run and you ride on Strava or whatever it might be. The clubs might say pick a course or come up with the most creative course you can come up with when it draws on the Strava. If people have got Strava, you can see how it tracks your run. And then also, I think Jono referred to it as well around that technique and personal development stuff. Our clubs have gone really heavy on that. So we've also done some coach development activities online for our broader coach network as a state body. But our clubs have started to deliver those activities online. So it might be, instead of Monday swim, it's Monday seminar with the physio, or our running shop partner, our bike shop partner, whatever it might be. So again, as Jonathan alluded to, supporting the sponsors as best possible. Our clubs have done a superb job of that. And in terms of engaging youth and kids, we've had several sort of online activities that I suppose are more mind development stuff. So word finds, crosswords, spot the difference sort of stuff. But stuff that we've put on our social media as a national and state body, and then fed through down to clubs and into our youth markets, which has kept them engaged in what would have been the off season and a hiatus. We've actually had, I think, better engagement from our members across the board than we would have ever had at this time of the year, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, that's excellent. Question for Vanessa. What advice do you have for clubs returning from COVID in terms of re-engaging people back into the club and making sure that that re-engagement is a positive experience?
I mean, I think the touch points that Erica and the team at the Trobe have just described are actually even more important now than they were before COVID. And I think we're going to have a lot more people, both new participants coming into a club and those who were in clubs that maybe are a bit more reticent, a bit more anxious about returning. And I think the club has a really important role in reassuring participants that it's okay to be rusty, it's okay to be a bit less fit than you were, and really focusing more on that social element, because I think, you know, as we all know in the sports sector, it's really about the social aspects are the most important part of the sport experience. So I think that focus on making sure that people feel welcomed and sharing that load across the club might be really important. There might be a fantastic person in one of your teams that would be a great welcomer but isn't part of the committee, who could step up and take some of those sorts of roles. And I think keeping talking to your members and new participants about what are they worried about, what are they anxious about, and making sure that we're tapping into that and continuing to hear what they've got to say and trying to address that across a whole range of fronts. But particularly making everyone feel that, you know, we're all in this together. I think that was mentioned before, and that, you know, it is a new normal, and the whole club can have a role to play in this, not just the one coach or the committee. And it's really important around how do we make sure that, you know, both your members coming back, and some of those are raring to go, ready to go, wanting to get back on, but there's others who may need a lot more support. So thinking about who's in your club that's really good at being that empathetic support person is really important, and has a great role to play right now as well, to make people feel comfortable to come back to sport and have a great experience at your club.
Mm-hmm. Question in the Q&A. I'll open this up to any of our guest speakers. From Nick from Football. How can we better meet the challenge of reflecting our culturally diverse society in clubland and in our institutions?
I can probably have a first go at this one. I mean, I think part of that is, again, back to the touch point about the marketing and the material that clubs are putting out into the community, and making sure that the photos, the imagery, the messaging is all reflecting a diverse community. I think that's really important in terms of showing that your club is a welcoming place for people from all communities and backgrounds. So I think that's a good starting point in terms of how you're showing the face of your club to your community, and making sure that people from diverse backgrounds are represented.
Erica did answer this one in the Q&A, but I would like to open it up to our speakers as well. It's from Pratiti. Do you recommend accepting new members at this time? Even if you're having modified training, it's unknown whether we'll get back to normal, or is it unfair to limit training to existing members?
I'll go first. So today is membership renewal day for the year for triathlon, so quite a timely topic for us. We continue to encourage clubs to welcome new members, and our clubs that invest heavily in that space do a terrific job. And it might not be the norm for now, as we say, and as we've all heard, but I think it's crucial that you continue to do so. I think people in the wider community would benefit from social interaction and connection more than ever. I know in my own sport participation, it's getting back to training is more important for the social and mental health elements of it, rather than the physical stuff, which I think you alluded to, Vanessa. So yeah, would certainly encourage clubs to open their doors at this time. I think everyone's got a little bit more patience and understanding around things. Things might not be as slick or as efficient as they are around how we operate. We're trying to wade our way through various new requirements around health and safety and spacing, distancing, cleansing, all that sort of stuff. So I'd encourage clubs to continue to welcome new members and communicate openly and have the doors open.
Yeah, I'd absolutely second that. You know, you think of people potentially moving into a new area, wanting to connect with their local community. What a better spot to do it than at a sporting club? And we at Stonington really observed the different ways our parks and gardens were being used as opposed to traditional sport, and just see it as a great opportunity, you know, for our clubs to go and connect with new members of the community who are starting to use those facilities. They're familiar with the parks and gardens now of where they are. We've got quite a few tennis clubs which are hidden away, which people are discovering. Again, we've learned through surveying and polls, and you know, huge opportunity now for clubs to really get a new membership base who are coming back and potentially fill the void where members aren't going to return.